looking at Mark chapter 5, verse 1 to 20, think of the phrase radical departure. What does that suggest to you? You know, if you had a new career in a new town, you'd say that was a radical departure from your old way of life. And Mark chapter 5, this first story in the chapter, is a radical departure from what seems to be like the norm of Jesus' ministry. He's outside Israel, maybe for the first time. You see, the Jews had this system of graded holiness. It's like a series of concentric circles. And right at the centre was the Holy of Holies, where God dwelt. And then outside were the courts, the various courts of the temple, then Jerusalem, the holy city itself, and then Israel. And Israel had its own system of grades. You remember the phrase where it says Galilee of the Gentiles? It meant it was a bit racially mixed and impure and unclean. But then to go beyond Galilee was to go into the unknown. It was to go into the darkness and the uncleanness. Now, I mean, in those places, they even dealt in pigs. Now, interestingly, in Jewish theology, there was two animals that could possess evil spirits. Did you know that? One was the snake and one was the pig. And the snake symbolised intellectual cunning. You know that bit in Genesis where it says, the most subtle of beasts. And the other one was the pig. So one was intellectually unclean and the other one was physically unclean. They were symbols of demonic power. And so Jesus journeys on an apparent whim into the heart of darkness, and then he encounters this strange, screaming, this naked, blaspheming, cursing wreck of a man, the personification of uncleanness. And he restores him with a word of command. He heals, he moves into the man's spirit and cleanses the house. And you might say the pig, the physical uncleanness, and the snake, the intellectual, the mental uncleanness, have both been overcome. And so that they have this wonderful phrase, they saw him clothed and in his right mind. Clothed is the outside, in his right mind is the inside. Jesus had fixed it. So the radical departure of Jesus from Israel is matched by the radical departure of this man from one way of life into a new way of life. It's the fear of this transformation, according to Mark and Luke, prompt the locals to ask Jesus to leave town immediately. Can't you just leave well alone? We had it sorted. We had the chains ready. You got the idea that they'd asked the man to leave town and chained him up to make sure he didn't come back into their comfortable way of life. And now they were asking Jesus to leave town and not come back into their comfortable way of life. You know, many churches prefer to try to chain the demons rather than to evict them. And the radical transformation that supernatural power brings is a scary proposition. Can't you just leave things as they are? But we have a kingdom mandate. It's at the end of the Gospels, the closing chapters. And that mandate is simply to go everywhere and share the good news of the kingdom, the good news of the transforming power of the presence of Jesus. And even that is a radical departure from the normal way of thinking about what Christian life should be like. You know, William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, he wasn't exactly popular in his day. You know the phrase he said, "I will fight while women weep." That's powerful, isn't it? There is stuff to do. There is a war to be fought. And Jesus, the faith of Jesus, was a warring principle against the principle of darkness. So just as Jesus evicts the demons into a herd of pigs who promptly turn into assaulted pork, so the local respectable people basically evict Jesus from the region. Now maybe the financial loss of a herd of pigs was a consideration, but whatever, there's always going to be a sensible reason for people to diss the power of God, to mistrust it. But what about the man? he just begs to go with Jesus. Well, why not? Jesus is his life. Jesus is the source of his transformation. He just wants to go and be with him, to stay close. The first time he sees Jesus, he throws himself down in worship, and now you can almost see him clinging to Jesus. You are everything. You are everything. I want to be with you. And Jesus says, no, you've been with me. Now I'm sending you out. Go to them. So Jesus suggests this, the last time I'm going to use the phrase radical departure. He says, go and tell people what has happened to you. You shall be my witnesses. And you know what a witness is required to do when he goes into court? Only one thing. He's required to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's what Jesus requires of the man and of us. That we just stick to the facts of what's happened to us and tell people about it. Because we're called into the same reality, into the same radical humanity, the sheer adventure of sticking to the facts, of saying what God has done to you, and asking the question, what can't God do with people that are hungry for the power of God moving in their lives? Amen. May God bless you.